It's just Thursday at the Canadian Grand Prix, and we've already discussed track changes, team changes, and now we discuss regulation changes. Tim Hauraney and Daniel Zakrzewski here with you in Montreal. Tim, the FIA announced the 2026 regulations this morning, and they're pretty substantial now.
Yeah, it's a huge change, Z. I mean, you're going from having a regulation change in 2022 all the way into a massive engine change and car change for 2026. And so, what does that mean for the racing? And like in 2014 when we had the new hybrids come online, and again when we came into 2022 even, there is a team that is going to hit on something that's going to deliver that dominance that we always talk about. And so my thing with all of it is that why not try and have your regulation change stay a little bit longer than just, say, 5 years? Because in my opinion, I just think it's too much, because you're not letting the regulation breathe enough. With this current regulation that we have, and we were talking about this earlier, it's that the more you can stretch it out, the more other teams that are, say, at the back can catch up, and we can see even more racing. So this regulation change that we're in now, you can see that there's a team like Ferrari, like McLaren, they are starting to claw back into Red Bull's advantage. And if you left that for a few more years, then you could have even more teams getting involved, and that deficit from the leader to, say, 5th place or whatever on the racetrack is going to be that much closer.
One of the biggest discussion points from the 2022 regulation changes, especially after Monaco's procession race, whatever you want to call it, where there wasn't much overtaking, it's been the size of the cars. How much do you think has there been maybe a bit of too much of a focus on that, and how do you see the regulations affecting the racing with the size of the cars this time around?
It's a good question. I mean, if we go back and we talk about Monaco, obviously the cars are too big for that track. They just are. But they're not, say, too big for a track like Azerbaijan. They're not too big for a track like Miami. They're not too big for a track like here in Canada. So there are tracks where the racing is possible and the cars, aren't too big for the actual track. If anything, the cars are actually too heavy right now, and they could do with being a little bit lighter. I like the fact that they've gone with a shorter wheelbase for this regulation. It is going to provide some more passing opportunities at, say, a track like Monaco with a smaller car. And I also think that reducing the weight of the actual car is a good idea as well. But granted, you have to make sure you're keeping up with the safety aspect of all of it at the same time, right? Because there is a reason why these cars are getting heavier, and part of it is safety, and which everyone is for. So when we take a look at this at a bigger picture, I mean, I like what they've done. I like the idea of sustainable fuels. I just think they need to have a regulation and just make it stick for a longer period of time.
As I saw you reading the regulations, by the way, in the back of the car as we were on our way here, I saw your eyes lighting up a little bit as if you were excited by some of them. Is there one that kind of sticks out and you're like, I'm very excited to see how this plays out on track?
Yeah, I like the idea of doing away with the DRS. I do. I'm a racer by heart.
By heart, absolutely.
I like you have to outwit your opponent. I like the fact that you have to force them into mistakes. I'm not a huge fan of easy passes. Look, I get why we have DRS now. I understand. I like the idea that they've got this override mode within, the engine or the power unit, where they can actually activate it whenever they kind of want, so they can either close a gap or they can make a pass. I think that's smarter, because that leaves it to the driver to actually have to think their way through an actual race. They have to think their way through a lap as well, and I think that's going to provide us with some pretty incredible racing, to be honest.
Well, we're going to have to wait until 2026 to see how the regulation changes affect the racing, but with this much rain's already coming right now. The forecast for the whole weekend, we could see a bit of a grid shakeup this weekend at the Canadian Grand Prix.